Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX14 Walsh and welcome to some more Gran Turismo Sport, a racing game developed by Polyphony Digital and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4. Focusing on the game's online mode, known as Sport Mode, in this episode I take a look at my performance in the first race of the second stage of the 2019 Manufacturer Series season, which was a Group 3 race held at the Red Bull Ring circuit. With that, let's get racing. Taking a look at the grid then, you'll see that I qualified second with a 1:30.8. A very positive story for qualifying as a result, in that I beat my target time by a tenth of a second, albeit I was not able to change for pole as set by the Frenchman here in the GTR of 1:30.3, an absolutely exceptional lap. But I achieved my target in qualifying, which was to qualify on the front of the grid, the front row i.e. because I expected over the race distance that I was going to struggle and be off the optimum race pace compared to the likes of the Ford Mustang behind me in third, the Hyundai in fifth and the other GTR in seventh place. Now to elaborate on this, I found that at this circuit with the configuration or the race setup we had, it being a sprint race of 10 laps, everybody mandated to use the racing hard tyre, tyre wear and fuel consumption would not be an issue. However, getting the tyres warmed up would be a critical issue and something that's quite difficult to achieve in the NSX, particularly going up into turns 1 and 3 on the first lap. But indeed that first lap, if not the second lap as well, the tyres would be quite cold, and as a result that would be very difficult to manage, in tandem with the fact that the NSX being a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, it felt as though the change in camber in sectors 1 and 3 of this circuit, particularly turns 1 and 10, would really affect the back end of the NSX and make it a very difficult car to control, especially when you've got that cold tyre factor as well. There are exceptions of course. The Lamborghini Huracan, another mid-engine rear-wheel drive car if I remember correctly, was very strong around here, but in the case of the NSX I felt as though it was quite a weak car for this circuit compared to others, and so I'd be trying to hold on to that second place I qualified with and not really challenging for first place. Coming to the end of the grid as a result now, all of us being B driver rating drivers in this 20 car group, and what we're going to see at the very start is in the rolling start procedure there is no side to side weaving, which caught me by surprise. I did not expect this during my practice race sessions. I've been practicing by myself and not as part of a racing group, and so this means the tyres were not tepid, they were dead cold. And this would make it very difficult going into turn 1 to get things right, and if I got on the power too soon I'd see the back end of the car go sliding and the potential for me to go charging off onto the grass, alternatively going onto the outside of the circuit, and upon rejoining I might have gained some time and therefore pick up a penalty. But we're about to get underway, and what I will try to do as much as possible is hold on to the back of the GTR, because I expect the Mustang behind me to have a straight line speed advantage, and I want that GTR to help give me a bit of additional speed through the slipstream they can afford to me, as long as we stay within 8 tenths of a second behind them. So we're coming up into turn 1, and as we're heading along here we can see the GTR's getting over. We get it right on in the braking zone, albeit the Mustang's very close behind us. As we come through the corner we miss the apex a little bit, that's not a problem, but we do get sideways as we get on the throttle, too soon on the throttle then, we didn't straighten out the steering enough, and as a result the Mustang is able to take the place from us as we now go charging up the hill towards turn 3 here, with a little kink here being turn 2. As we go charging up the hill I'm going to stay behind the Mustang. I'm not staying in their slipstream because I do not want the lack of downforce in the car to cause me to go charging into the back of them. That's something I have to keep in mind as well. The Group 3 NSX really does struggle when it's in the slipstream of another car. That lack of downforce afforded to the front of the car means that under braking the car really just slides along, and you're going to see that later on in this race. But for now we're holding on to the back of the Ford Mustang as we come down the hill into turn 4 here. We can see the Hyundai, who qualified in 5th, is already up into 4th and right on our backside. They've been very aggressive in terms of their start, they're really trying to make up the places. And we're going to note very shortly that in 5th place right now is the other GTR that qualified 7th. So we can see the strongest cars at this circuit, based on my experience today, are really trying to push their way out the field already and break away. And there's this little pack now forming effectively of 1st through to 5th, and then there's a small gap down to 6th where there's a lot of fighting going all the way down to 10th. So the grid is already separating up. And I want to try and stay in this leading pack where possible. I do not want to fall further down. I always want to have the slipstream of somebody in front of me to pull me along in this leading group, so that way I can get a good amount of points and a good finishing position. But as we come out of turn 10 here to end the lap, I get a little bit sideways. The Mustang ends up going charging off into the grass, albeit they straighten out the steering very well, which means they don't have to worry about picking up a penalty, because they just about kept it on circuit. But unfortunately, my little incident has cost me third place for the time being as we're going to turn 1 for lap number 2. The Hyundai coming down the inside, brilliant move by them, taking advantage of their straight line speed advantage there with the mistake I made in the final corner on lap number 1. And now we're going to charge up the hill towards turn 3, and I'm staying right in their slipstream here because I get a feeling I can perhaps get them back going into turn 4. But now remember I said about riding in the slipstream of another car. As the Hyundai pulls over, I start to run out of that aerodynamic downforce in the front, and that causes me to go into the back of the Hyundai. It's a little tap compared to what it could have been, but still, that's the point of note there in the fact that under braking, the NSX would really glide forward. As we now switch to the replay camera here, you're going to see me try and make the move on the inside going down into turn 4. Where I've got the straight line speed advantage, I feel more confident on the brakes going into this corner, and I'm going to nail it spot on here and just about give the Hyundai enough room. And as they go out onto the curb there, they get a little bit sideways going into the side of our car, and we're able to make the move stick as we now continue round to turn 6. We're back up into 3rd, and the Hyundai's now got the GTR in 5th to worry about right on their 6. Good move there, I reckon, but we now got to push forward and try to get onto the back of the Mustang in front, because we can see the gap between ourselves and the Mustang is well over a second right now, and that means I do not have the benefit of the slipstream in front of me. Instead, I'm affording that benefit to the guys behind, and I've got to try and find a way of pulling away and breaking the tow distance. Going through to turn 9 here, we're going to get it relatively clean through, and then down into turn 10. We're going to stay with the replay camera because a lot's about to happen. As we come to the end of lap number 2, we get quite cleanly through the corner here, but that Hyundai, keep in mind, has not given up. As we go charging up the hill towards turn 1, I decide to brake quite early here. I brake early compared to most, I'd say, in this lobby, and we're going to see that Hyundai is going to make an absolutely daring move up the inside here. Very daring move by them. Very late on the brakes as well, but they make it stick. Unfortunately, because I get pushed out a little bit because of their move, it means that I have to back off the throttle, otherwise I would have gone onto the outside of the circuit, and so I've lost the speed to the Hyundai now, and I'm actually having to fight the GTR and an FT1, a Toyota, that will come charging up behind. The Hyundai's dragged those guys up into the fight against me, and the FT1 goes down the inside very late on the brakes there, and parks it on the apex. I go into the back of them a little bit. They pushed the GTR wide by looks of things, so the GTR went wide by themselves. And as we try to rejoin the circuit, we're alongside the GTR at this point, giving each other enough space, albeit I did collide into the side of them. That was my fault there. And now we're fighting one another going down into turn 4 here, and we're going to go as late as possible on the brakes once again, much like we did with the Hyundai, but this time I don't get it right. I go too late on the brakes, and I end up going off onto the gravel, albeit I don't spin the car out, I just gradually rejoin, and unfortunately I lose the ground to the GTR, and now I've got to worry about a friendly Honda NSX who's right behind, and they get on the inside as we go into turn 6 here. They're going to make the move stick. Well done to by them. They took advantage of my situation, and I don't really want to fight the friendly NSX, and let me talk a little bit about the team dynamic here. So when I see a friendly NSX by another Honda driver in one of these racing lobbies, I do think to myself that I want to beat that Honda driver, because at the time, the Honda in front from the Czech Republic, if I remember the flags correctly, that Honda and I were literally one place off of one another in the standings. But what I thought to myself was, why do I want to hurt one of my teammates? I'd rather see if we can both do very well. As I get a little sideways coming out of turn 10, and the Beetle right behind goes charging off the circuit compared to us. And that's that aerodynamic effect, I reckon, in combination with them perhaps trying to brake as late as possible into turn 10, really causing them to go off the circuit, and they're going to fall back. And now we've got this pack effectively fighting for fall through to 7th, where I'm at the back end of it, and then we've got the, I believe it is the Toyota FT1 at the front of the pack right now, and then there's a bit of space to 3rd, and then 2nd and 1st are well off in the distance. But in terms of dealing with the Honda, I don't want to cost them a lot of time. I want to see both of us do very well. So what I want to do for the time being is let the Honda pull me towards the guys in front. Now keep in mind, look at the timers on the left hand side of your screen right now. I'm not within the slipstream zone of the Honda in front, nor am I letting the guys behind, the South African in 8th place, use my slipstream to their advantage. So I'm in a nice no man's land at the moment, and this means I can just focus on building up a rhythm, getting back into the pace, making sure the tyres are nice and warm, and that I'm managing the tyre wear appropriately, because there is a little bit of intrinsic tyre wear, even though it's not really a factor here, and I need to make sure I manage it appropriately. I'm just building up my position right now and getting ready to fight again. I need to calm down a little bit, because it's been very frustrating in a way over the first couple of laps to have lost a good number of positions, having started 2nd and dropped down to 7th. Not to the point it's going to cause me to try and ram people off the circuit, but I've just got to cool myself down and get ready for fighting to come. There's plenty more fighting available if I want it. I've just got to drive a good race. So I want the Honda to just, when I start getting into their slipstream, because they're fighting with the Nissan in front, so it's going to cost them both time, I want them to pull me up towards the back of the GTR, and then I can start to factor into the fighting. And where possible, I will try to get past the Honda, but I'll do it somewhere where it's not going to cost us too much time. So it may be overtaking them on a straight, such as the straight from turn 3 to turn 4, on a start-finish straight, or going into a corner where they perhaps get a little bit wonky, such as coming out to turn 10 when there's a high likelihood, or coming out to turn 1 and then going onto this straight as we are right now. They may get it wrong, and that would be the ideal passing position. And then when I'm in front of them, I want to pull them along rather than fight against them. I want to pull them along to the guys in front, so that way we can help one another out and get the best possible amount of points for each other. Of course, there is that competitive factor, so I'm going to try and finish in front of them, but hopefully you get the picture. I want to help them and I want them to help me as much as possible. And as we come around onto the straight down to turn 4 here for the 5th time, really at this point there's nothing for me to worry about. We can see we've set our fastest lap so far on lap number 4. Well off of the leading pace as set by the GTR, that 1:30.7, but still these are lap times that I should be seeing 1:31s at this point in the race. Yeah, a little bit sideways coming out to turn 4 there. I am pushing quite hard now because I feel as though I've cooled myself down. I'm now in the slipstream with the Honda in front, so I can really start to get back into the fight. And here we're going to get synced up very nicely coming through turns 6 and 7 here, where we're going to pick up some good time on the Honda in front. Obviously, we've got that slipstream factor now coming to effect on the loss of downforce. We saw it there coming out to turn 7, just went a little bit wider than perhaps we should have, so we're going to lose a bit of ground. But it's not too much of a costing factor now, and I reckon the NSX in front of me is experiencing the same issues as I am, or the car being difficult to control around this circuit in the changing camber corners. And right now the NSX has made a mistake coming out to turn 9, got it wide. As we come down to turn 10, I'm going to cut back on the inside here, and actually by grazing the inside of the car, I reckon I've actually helped them out a little bit in terms of helping them get the car under control, because they could use me as a wall to bounce the front of their car off of, and that straightened them out a little bit, and now we can both chase down 5th and 4th. Whereby it looks as though 4th place has just picked up a half-second penalty, and we're going to try and get as close as possible to capitalise on that. And now looking in the rear view mirror, we're not going to be switching to the replay camera anymore in this video because I feel it's better to see things on board. What you're going to see is that NSX will get close to me through some of the sections, but they're not going to be too aggressive, and I think they're working on the same logic as myself. We're both part of the same team, let's work together to get the guys in front. There's no point squabbling over 6th place right now. We're only 2/3 the way into the race distance. Let's fight over 6th place if it's just us two fighting over 6th at the end of the race. We've got 1 lap to do it. But for now, let's get into the fight for 4th and 5th, because if we can, there's more points on the table. And so you'll see that the NSX will get close to me, such as when we go through turn 1. They seem to be more aggressive through turn 1. But in return, we're not really worrying about one another. And this is really nice to me as a driver right now, because what I can think to myself is, right, the guy behind I don't think is going to be that aggressive. They're more of an opportunist, as we saw when they overtook us back on lap number 4 if I remember correctly, but they're not someone who's going to force a move through. Instead, we're just going to work to our mutual advantage, and the time to the guys in front is starting to come down, and that's the positive. It's coming down, it's at 2.1 seconds right now, but with the fighting they're doing, I'm expecting it to drop even more. As we come to the end of lap number 6 then, what we're going to see as we come through turn 10 is that we're going to nail this better than we have on most parts, where we get it nice and tight there. We don't end up seeing the rear end start sliding, and that gets us the ability to pull a little bit away from our friend behind. Now, I'm not worried about trying to keep them in slipstream distance. If they fall off of the pace compared to myself, then as a result, I'm just going to have to leave them behind. But as we can see going through turn 1, they close up very quickly, and that's because they brake later than myself. And that's that confidence factor as me as a driver right now. I was not confident going through turn 1 by braking as late as possible. I had to brake by the 100 metre board, otherwise I was going to end up throwing it off the circuit. But that's just personal driving, that's not the car. As we come through turn 3 here and go onto the straight, we're going to see that the Toyota in front picks up a 5-second penalty. That must have really cut a corner or caused an issue with the GTR, and that means we are now guaranteed to get ourselves up into 5th place. And by working together here with the Honda, that means both of us get up there. If we'd been fighting, perhaps we could have fallen off and let that Toyota hold on to 5th place after taking the penalty. But it really looks as though the fighting in front is bringing us into the position to try and get a place off of that GTR, because look how the gap has dropped so quickly. It's down to 1.1 seconds. Over the course of 1 lap, it's dropped by a whole second already, and you can see the guy behind in the NSX is now pushing really hard, because he or she knows, just like myself, we've got the ability to get 4th and 5th place here. Let's go for it. And they're going to give you a gentle little tap in the backside here, which causes us both to build up a little bit more speed as we come out of turn 7 and into turn 8, albeit the Honda does fall back a little bit there because they had to get the car under control, but we both pick up the place off of the Toyota taking their penalty, and now it's a case for us to really push after that GTR and get 4th place off of them and then fight over what's left. As we come out to turn 10 here, we get nicely synced up. We're almost in the slipstream of the GTR in front. They were a little bit conservative coming out to turn 10 there, and we're now into their slipstream distance. You'll see I'm looking behind directly to see if there's any visual indicators such as flashing lights from the NSX behind that they want to just stay behind or they want me to get out of the way. And as we come charging through turn 1 now, we can see the GTR gets a better line through, but we actually get quite a smooth line through that corner ourselves, meaning we don't lose as much time as we perhaps could have. And it looks as though the check behind is actually falling back a little bit here. Perhaps they're just trying to conserve their position, or perhaps not end up going into the back of me, because they know I'm going to try and make a move on the GTR and they want to be ready to pounce. Now I get a little bit deep coming through turn 3, but it doesn't cost me too much time because it means that I can straighten out the car sooner and I can really latch onto the slipstream of the GTR in front. We're only on lap 8, we've got a couple of laps to go. We're going to try and get the place off them on the final lap. For now, it's just sizing up where they're strong and where they're weak. As we come down to turn 4 here, we can see they take a rather nice line through the corner. There's nothing to really note in terms of their driving style as we get a little bit sideways, but we're holding on very well, and it looks as though our friend behind in the other Honda is starting to fall off of the race pace at this point in time, with them being just shy of 8 tenths off, so just in our slipstream zone at the moment, but it looks as though they are struggling to keep up right now, whereas I'm going to use the slipstream of the GTR in front to help me pull away on the straights, and in turn just try and maintain my race pace as we go through the more technical sections, i.e. sector 2 in particular. But here as we come out of turn 8 and go into turn 9, we can see the GTR gets a really nice run out of there. So what I'm thinking is, right, from the joining part of turn 8 to turn 9, the GTR is very strong. How about in turn 10 here? Well, it looks as though the GTR's got it made in turn 10 so far, albeit, hold on a second, I've just gained a heck of a lot of time on the back end of that GTR. Right, I know turn 10 is going to be the place where I can gain a huge amount of time. I want to be as close as possible to the GTR coming out to turn 10 by the end of this lap, so I can fight against them going on to the final lap. Coming out to turn 1 here, I can see that the time is starting to stabilise a little bit, if not actually extend now. That's the GTR straight line speed, but on top of that they got a much cleaner line coming out to turn 1. The Honda behind has fallen off completely, so it looks like they made a mistake coming out to turn 1 this time, and now it's just the fight for 4th that I've got to worry about. It's just me and the GTR, and look how close I can get to the back of them coming out to turn 3 here, because I can brake much later, and that's really nice to know, because now I can go very deep on the brakes into turn 3 compared to them, and I can be right in their slipstream as we go charging down to turn 4. And I get the feeling what the GTR's hoping is they can just about hold me off before we come into turn 4, because they'll know from the experience earlier on in the race I love to brake very late into turn 4 compared to themselves, and if I can get that inside line, the position is all mine. We're going to keep behind them right now, keep looking for potential weaknesses and analysing their strengths. We're going to come through the more technical section now, so turns 6 and 7. We're holding on to their slipstream here, they get a little bit wide, and I have to back off the throttle because I'm feeling the effect of lack of downforce over the front of the car. And nothing's really changing here, albeit we're right tight behind them at this point, and we're both going to get a clean run off of turn 7 into turn 8 and up the hill and down into turn 9 here. And again, the GTR is showing its strength here in terms of straight line speed. I'm just holding on to the back of them, but they are pulling away as we now come through into turn 9, and we can see that we're both getting a clean line through here. But in turn 10 again, you're going to see that I gain a lot of time on the GTR as we come through, and it looks as though the GTR that's in first has binned it into the wall. Perhaps they disconnected from the game, perhaps their steering wheel broke, or alternatively their controller disconnected, but they're out of the race. We've already picked up a place, we're up into 4th now. Can we get 3rd place of the GTR on this final lap, i.e. the Austrian in front of us? Let's take away 3rd place at the home Grand Prix. Can we do it? So we get a clean run out of turn 1, albeit we lost a little bit of time coming out to turn 10 there by the looks of things. The GTR got a better run, so we're not in the slipstream zone right now, so we've got a lot of time to make up as we go into turn 3 here. But remember, we can brake a lot later than them, so we really brake as late as possible here. Coming down the gears, coming down into 1st gear. Can we get a clean run out of turn 3 as the GTR gets a little sideways? We do as well, but not as much, and that means we've actually gained a couple of tenths a second, and we're right in their slipstream as we're now charging down towards turn 4. But unfortunately, that GTR straight line speed is again benefiting them massively as they're able to pull away. And then we go brake as late as possible, going down to turn 4 here, and we can see we are closing up on them as they brake even further onto the apex of the corner. Unfortunately, in my aggression, I get a little bit sideways coming out to turn 4, and that's cost me some time to the back of their car. But we're only halfway through the lap now, so as we go into turn 6 and 7, we're going to close up again, taking a much tighter inside line, but the car's sliding at the back, they're getting on the throttle a little too early. I'm being really aggressive right now, because I really want this place if I can get it. Nice tight line going into turn 7 there, but going out wide onto turn 8, but I keep it on the circuit just about, which means I'm right behind the GTR. Can I make the move into turn 10 potentially? Well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to be incredibly late on the brakes. We're coming through turn 9 right now. Get a really nice run through the corner here. If I'm going to do it, I've got to go for a lunge here. But in the end, I decide, you know what? I just can't do it. I'm not close enough to go for the lunge. It's not appropriate to go through it because I'd end up walling their car off the circuit. I push them off the circuit. I'm going to have to come home in 4th place. But good race all the same. Having had time to reflect, I was very happy with the 4th place I managed to achieve, given how things played out in terms of the amount of fighting, which was all valuable experience in itself, and the fact there seemed to be a track where the NSX was weaker compared to a good amount of its competition, such as the Fords and the Nissan GT-R. The key bit of knowledge that I need to take away from this race, however, is the concept of getting the tyres up to temperature, particularly the racing hard compound, which really takes a lot of time to warm up, and that costs race pace, particularly over the first 2 laps in this race. And on top of that, when you're not up to temperature on those tyres, you cannot be as aggressive or abusive to the tyres as you can when they're up to temperature, and that leads to a higher likelihood of making mistakes or seeing the back end of the NSX in particular go sliding out on corners. But we're going to be taking the experience and knowledge gained here to the next race at the Autopolis International Racecourse Circuit on Wednesday the 7th of August 2019. Until then, thank you for watching as always. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like, comment or subscribe for future episodes. I have been TX141, and until next time, take care and drive safely.